Hello, Howard. I'm so happy to have you on my French podcast today. It's truly a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. We have a different time zone.
I bet it's really early for you. Thank you so much for being here. And I've known you for a while now, but for those who don't know you, can you explain a bit what you do in your life and how you came into this specific and at that time, this unknown field? I know it's related to Sano because like you worked with him, but if you can, yeah, talk a bit about that, it would be a pleasure to hear that story.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to talk about that. Uh, well, I'm a physician and I started out at a university setting, so I did a lot of research and teaching and writing and running programs. And in 2002, I had already become a full professor at the medical school I was working at for 18 years. And I read this book by Dr. Sarno, and Dr. Sarno talked about the mind body connection. And he specifically focused on people with back pain, but saw people with other conditions as well. And he was looking at his patients, and he saw that a lot of people had severe back pain with fairly mild abnormalities on their x-rays or MRIs of their back. And on the other hand, he saw people who had no back pain, who had very severe, seemingly severe abnormalities on their x-rays or MRIs. And it just didn't make sense to him. And he really wanted to understand it because the traditional treatments for back pain often don't help. And he started looking at the mind, and he started looking at the role of stress and emotions. And when he evaluated people very carefully and closely, he found that many people had abnormalities of their MRIs or x-rays, but they didn't actually have damage to their spine because even healthy people with no pain often have abnormalities of their MRIs or x-rays. I certainly do. And research has shown that. And so he was right about that, that you can have a very abnormal MRI and have nothing actually wrong with your spine and have pain. And therefore, he concluded that many people, the pain was coming from their brain. And this was a revolutionary idea. And I worked with him a bit, and then I decided to see if that method would work for me and what I could learn about it. And that was 22 years ago. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Nice job. And like, let's be clear for some listeners that don't know what is the neuroplastic pain, or they are confused about pain. Like, that actually there are a few terms for that because there is the mind body syndrome,
Right.
nociplastic pain, tension myositis syndrome, so TMS. So different names for the same meaning. But yeah, tell us
Right.
more about it. What is neuroplastic pain of mind body
Yeah.
syndrome?
Yeah, we started to use the term neuroplastic pain recently. And the reason that we use that term is to be accurate scientifically. So neuroplasticity is the science of how the brain works, that our brain learns by its experiences. When children and you have a baby and your baby's learning every day. He's developing new neural circuits for babbling and speaking and crawling and walking, and all these things are learned, and children have incredible capacity to learn different languages and instruments and everything. And so do adults. So the brain is always changing and always rewiring. And the brain produces what we experience. So when we see, we actually don't see with our eyes. Light comes in our eyes, but the brain actually creates the images that we see. And this is amazing to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a drink of water. So my
Yeah.
voice is going bad. Here.
Hey, Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
I remember, like you were talking to us about the fact that you can have like some people can have some glasses that make like the see the
Yeah.
world upside down, like different angle, but 1 week or 1 month after they will see like normally,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The brain can change what we experience, what we see, what we hear. We can hear things. When you listen to a song, lyrics, you don't hear what they're saying because your brain is filling in all the details that you weren't sure about. Our brain is there to protect us and alert us and alarm us to danger. And it turns out when you touch a hot stove, it's not your finger causing pain. It's the brain. And we know that because people can have an injury and have no pain. So why would the brain make no pain when an injury? Normally, if you break an ankle, you want an injury because obviously you want to stop walking on it. So the brain is signaling you there's danger. But if there's a bigger danger, a lion chasing you, and your ankle is hurt,
Mhm.
your brain wouldn't give you ankle pain because it wants you to run. It's the bigger danger. And so the brain can turn on pain or turn off pain. And we know that the brain can cause pain in the absence of any injury.
Yeah.
So when you take those two facts, that the brain doesn't always turn on pain when there is injury and can clearly turn on pain or other symptoms such as dizziness or ringing in the ears or nausea or all sorts of sensations in the presence of danger. If you're giving a lecture in front of 1,000 people, your stomach may feel nauseous and turn into knots. You may have diarrhea beforehand. That's your brain saying, hey, this is scary. And that's how our brain works. And so once we understand that, now we can drill down and see that the brain can learn pain. Pain can become a neural circuit in the brain that gets reinforced and becomes persistent over time. And so we've seen people who've had pain or other symptoms, as I say, um, for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And it can be reversed if it's not due to a structural problem. And
Mhm.
that is the revolution that's brewing very slowly in medicine as people are learning about neuroplasticity and neuroplastic pain.
So it's really about like the neurons that fire together, wire together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so just like I want to when you talk about the brain, do you talk about the nervous system in general?
Right. Well, that's a great question. A lot of people, again, it's a different terminology that
Mm.
people use. So neurons that, just to go back to that great point you just made, neurons that fire together, wire together. What happens is over time that when they say someone gets a back pain and it begins to hurt when they bend over. Well, their brain is learning that bending over is a trigger for that pain. That those neurons start firing together every time they bend over, they get pain. But it may be that once the back heals, the brain doesn't have to create pain when you bend over.
Yeah.
It's a learned response. It's a conditioned response. It's a habit in a sense.
Yeah.
And so if you can undo that habit, undo that conditioned response, which we have techniques for doing, you can reverse that. So, um, and your other question had to do with the nervous system. So the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system are different. Central nervous system is the brain and the
Brain.
brainstem, and the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves that come out of it that go to that send information to the body. So if my brain wants me to snap my fingers, it had to send a signal to the nerves so I can do this response.
Hmm.
But the nerves also send signals back to the brain. And so when we say the nervous system, probably we're referring to the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system all as one because they certainly work together.
Yeah.
The reason I like to talk about it more as the brain, because the peripheral nervous system doesn't have memory. The brain has memory. The brain has neuroplasticity. The brain controls the peripheral nervous system,
Hmm.
to a large degree. And so that's why when we talk about neuroplasticity, we're really talking about the brain because the brain is where the pain is originating from, and the brain is where we can help to reverse it.
Mm, okay, really interesting. Yeah. I really wanted to know the answer of that.
Yeah, yeah,
What clinical cues point you toward neuroplastic pain? I know you use the FIT criteria,
yeah,
functional, inconsistent, and triggered. Can you talk
yeah,
about it?
yeah. You've done your homework. Good job.
No, but I worked with you, I was a student, so I know.
Yeah. So, when someone has pain or any other symptom, obviously, as a physician, my job is to make sure there's not a structural condition causing it. There's not a hormone imbalance or a fracture or a tumor, an infection, an inflammatory condition. Um, but most of the time, and this isn't part of this revolution that we're talking about, most of the time when someone has chronic symptoms like this and they've been to a doctor and they've looked for the usual causes of disease and structural problem that I just mentioned, most of the time they haven't found them. Or they've been given a name of a syndrome. You have fibromyalgia, you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you have migraine. These are names of syndromes, but they don't those names don't necessarily mean that there's damage in the body in the same way that you have lung cancer. There's damage in the body. You have a stroke, you have a heart attack, there's damage in the body. You have dementia, there's damage in the body. But most of these syndromes that we're talking about, the pain syndromes, the fatigue syndromes, and also anxiety and depression, there's no actual damage in the body. And we've looked at that very, very carefully. And I'm writing a new book now, and it has all of those details in it exhaustively. There's over 800 medical references to talk about all these syndromes so that people can know that these for the most part, and everyone needs a careful evaluation, are not due to structural problems. So once you've decided that the syndrome that somebody has is not due to a structural problem, you want to take the next step and what we call rule in a neuroplastic problem and confirm that it truly is a neuroplastic problem. And that's where the fit criteria come in. So functional means a syndrome that is not due to structural problem by definition. So if someone has pain all over their body, whole body pain, there's no disease that causes that. If someone has pain in the whole arm, the whole head, there's a variety of areas that we know are not structural. For example, the whole arm, there's no nerve that goes to the whole arm. Nerves go to the inside of the arm or the outside of the arm.
Mm.
There's no one single disease that causes pain all over the body. And inconsistent mean the pain will turn on and off. It'll come and go. It'll shift and move. It'll move to different parts of the body. And again, now that tells us that the brain is turning certain neural circuits on and certain neural circuits off. And that is super, super helpful in determining that. And the pain can be, the third one is triggered. So the pain can be triggered by the weather, triggered by stress, triggered by sound or light or computer screens. And these tell us, again, that it's the brain. And so, the story I like to tell now, it's just, I learned about this last year, is a guy who had 25 years of back pain, leg pain, foot pain. He couldn't stand, he couldn't sit. When he sat, he had pain in his butt. When he stood, he had pain in his foot. And he had to retire. He couldn't do anything. He was in a recliner chair all the time.
Mm.
He was depressed, suicidal. His life was over. This is severe pain. And he was going to two major medical centers, giving him the best possible medical care that exists, and nobody could help. They just told him he was incurable. Anyway, somebody told him about neuroplastic pain, a physical therapist that he met. He said, you should look at this, check it out. Looks at some podcasts, look at some
Mm.
videos, which he did. And he said, wow, that's interesting, but does that really apply to me? And one day
Yeah.
he had a level of like 5 pain in his back and in his leg. And he walks into a pharmacy and he sees a long line. That means he's going to be standing in a long line. And within 3 seconds, his pain had shot from a 5 to a 9 just by seeing the line. And that is pain that's triggered by innocuous stimuli, the stress. His brain anticipated the pain, turned on the pain. And at that moment, he said, aha,
Mm. Proof.
proof,
Yeah.
right? Right? I don't know what you would say in French. Mon Dieu, sacre bleu.
I think we are a bit more vulgar.
Mon vulgar, yeah. In America, we would say WTF.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but that moment gave him the information he needed. And then he became confident that his pain was neuroplastic, even though it was severe, even though it had been there for a long, long time. And he got better.
Mm.
And he started moving and he started walking and he knew he wasn't hurting himself, that he wasn't damaged, that he wasn't broken. And he kept telling himself, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'll be fine. And he kept moving and he kept doing it. And some days were better than others. But over a few weeks, he started to get better.
Mm.
And that is a revolution because none of his doctors gave him any chance of recovering. And now he's completely pain free. He can do anything he wants.
Yeah, you must see so many people that feel broken and hopeless, you know?
Exactly. So many people. We're talking about the major causes of disability worldwide:
Yeah.
headache, back pain, musculoskeletal pain, stomach pain, pelvic pain, chronic fatigue syndromes, anxieties, depression.
Yeah, anxiety, yeah. And you know, like how does the brain learn to produce, but mainly maintain pain? I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the brain learns pain from two ways generally. One is an injury that occurs. So the injury causes the brain to create pain, and now the brain's doing it for a good reason to protect oneself, or a physical injury, or an emotional injury where the brain's giving pain or other symptoms that I mentioned for another different good reason. The good
Mm.
reason is there's something I'm worried about. There's something bothering you. There's some danger in your life. You know, if you had a parent who was very very critical in your childhood, you learn to be very sensitive to being criticized. You try to be perfect and good all the time. And then you grow up and now you have a boss who's being critical and micromanaging and yelling at you all the time, and you're trying to be perfect, but the boss is yelling at you, and then you get a headache. Well, there's a good reason for that headache or that stomach pain. There's a good reason for it. And the reason is the brain is trying to protect you from danger. But in this case, it's emotional danger.
Mhm.
And so the pain can start that way, but then the pain often takes a life of its own because of these conditioned responses that I mentioned. And the fact that when you get pain or these other symptoms, you start to fear it and worry about it and focus on it and trying to figure it out. And then the answer is not there. The answer is, oh, you've got a bulging disc, or you've got migraine, you've got fibromyalgia, you've got chronic fatigue syndrome. And that diagnosis makes you more fearful because that sends feedback back to the brain. There's a big problem. There's a big problem, a really big problem. And the brain goes, yeah, big problem. And then the brain creates more of the symptoms. So it becomes a vicious cycle
Yeah.
of pain or other symptoms and fear of them, focusing on them and making it worse. And then the emotional situation can also be unresolved. If you continue working in that job with this critical boss, well, your brain's continuing to get all these messages of not being safe, being in danger.
Yeah, yeah. And the fear behind it is so important because like when it lasts, like you begin to be very, yeah, scared and worried, and there is this vicious cycle of I'm afraid, so more pain equal more fear, and boop, 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 it
Exactly.
continues. Yeah. But it's really
Exactly. Every time
important.
you move, you start, if your back hurts when if your back hurts when you're, doing sit-ups, you say, well, I'll avoid sit-ups. But then your back hurts when you're just moving a little bit, so you avoid doing that. And then your back hurts when you're just sitting, so you avoid doing that. And pretty soon you can't do anything.
Yeah, you stay in bed all day. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you've avoided everything and your life has shrunken in.
Mm,
And then
yeah.
there's less social activity, so there's less joy in life. So that further feeds into this danger signal in the brain, etc.
Yeah. Also the victim mentality. I think it's really important to work on that, because otherwise you continue to send in a way some alarm, some danger, like in the brain, because I feel hopeless. Oh my God, when you speak with your boyfriend or your family, oh, I'm so hurt today, was a bad day.
Right.
I'm mad, I'm sick, and blah, blah, blah. So all this internal
Yeah.
dialogue is really not, it's really not great for feeling better.
And none of this is people's fault.
Hmm.
We're not blaming them. It's
No.
not because they're crazy. It's not because they want the pain or the symptoms. It's not because they're deficient or there's something wrong with them. It's just how the brain works. And, there's a topic that is hard to talk about a little bit, and most people don't want to talk about it. because of this fact of blaming and finding fault. And the topic is that women have higher rates of pain, anxiety, depression, and fatigue than do men. And as soon as you say that, women will feel attacked or blamed or gaslighted because you're saying, well, you're saying there's something wrong with us, it's our fault. But that's not the case at all. It turns out that women have a lot of pressures. Women often grow up in societies where they're taught to be perfect and good and not speak up and not say anything. They have higher rates of emotional abuse than do boys. They have higher rates of sexual harassment, higher rates of sexual assault. They have higher rates of intimate partner violence. They have higher rates of harassment in the workplace. They have higher rates of social media kind of issues that occur in teenagers and young people. And all these things put pressure on people. And when people feel under a lot of
Yeah.
pressure, their brain is going to react. And so part of this work is to empower people to take control of their lives, and especially women, so that they are standing up for themselves, so they
Hmm.
are speaking out and making their needs known, so they are getting out of situations that are dangerous, for them,
Yeah,
because the
completely.
brain is an alarm system like a smoke alarm.
Mm.
And so the fact that these occur more in women speaks to the fact of how women are treated in society. And it's also other marginalized people, minorities, LGBT folks, folks with gender nonconforming, immigrants, people who are marginalized in society have higher rates of pain and these other symptoms.
Yeah.
And so, it's a difficult topic to talk about to some degree, but I think this points to, societies that are healthy are healthy because they take care of people, that there's ways that people feel welcomed and safe and in their communities, in their neighborhoods.
Mm.
And there's just so much uh, polarization and hate really in society and wars, etc., that people begin to feel less and less safe. And these conditions are all increasing in society.
Yeah.
Pain is increasing. It's not, you know, heart attacks or cancer are not increasing. Strokes are not increasing. We have medical treatments for those. Anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, chronic pain are
Burnout.
all burnout. They're all increasing in
Yeah.
society. And that's a measure of what's happening in society. And so, I don't want to sound like I'm pontificating about
No, no,
all the ills of the world, but to be honest, to look at these, you see where these syndromes come from. And when you see people who are, working 2 or 3 jobs and trying to take care of their kids and having issues where they don't feel safe in their neighborhood or their workplace, or, their partners are not helping. I mean, women, I don't know. If you look at just childcare, who does most childcare? Women. Women who are married. Does that is women who are married, is it equal? No,
Mm.
it's not. I mean, that's just how society works.
Yeah, you're right.
And when
Completely.
COVID hit, it just really threw everything into such chaos all around the world.
Hmm.
And that created another upsurge in anxiety and depression and pain.
Yeah, completely. We often talk about pain like tension, being hurt, neck pain, knee pain, etc. But how do you explain the other strange symptoms that can be terrifying? For example, dizziness, parts burning sensation, acidic tingling, sensitivities, changing pain location, numbness, etc.
Yeah, yeah.
So many,
I
so
know
many.
there's so many
Yeah.
things. And since doing this work, that's what happened to Dr. Sarno. He started out mainly seeing people with back pain, but over time he would see all these other. The same thing happened to me. I
Hmm.
started seeing people uh, with localized pain that the brain was producing, and then I realized, well, they also have anxiety, and they had anxiety since they were young, and the anxiety got better and the pain got worse. Like it would
Hmm.
come, one would turn on and the other would turn off, or the ringing in the ears would turn on and then turn off, or the nausea or the dizziness. And we have all these new symptoms now that are being described, new syndromes that are being described, like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where people get dizzy when they stand up, mast cell activation syndrome, where
Mm.
people are feeling that they're having allergies to all these foods and they're having to eat fewer and fewer foods, and that's causing tremendous amount of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Um, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a genetic disorder that is certainly real, but what we're describing, the vast majority of people who are diagnosed with this syndrome don't have the genetic form of it. They have a very mild form. Their joints are a little bit loose, supposedly,
Mm.
but they're blaming everything, all this chronic pain on it. And the research shows that's not the case. So the brain can produce any symptom imaginable,
Yeah, because we are
including
unique, right?
burning. It can do anything at burning, like burning mouth. I've never heard of burning mouth syndrome, being a doctor for 20 years, and all of a sudden now we're seeing people with it. All the dizziness syndromes. There's people who have. There's a French term for this, mal d'embarquement syndrome, which is you feel like you're on a boat.
Oh yeah, I know that. I was reading
Yeah,
about that, yeah, a few days ago actually. Yeah, I didn't know
yeah,
that term.
yeah. And so it's a condition where people feel like they're on a boat, but they're
Yeah.
not on a boat.
They're in the
It's
earth,
their
yeah.
it's their brain producing that. Again, the symptoms are real, they're not imaginary. And when they're caused by the brain, they are potentially reversible.
Hmm. That's what we need to learn and memorize, that everything can be different depending on people, but it's all coming down to the same thing, which is the brain,
Right.
actually.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's not a disease in the body.
Yeah.
We did a study with back pain where we examined 222 people with chronic neck and back pain, and 98% of them had an abnormal MRI. But healthy people have abnormal MRIs. It's common. I do. You do, even at your young age,
Yeah.
most likely. So, um, but we determined that 88% had non-structural pain. 88% of the 222 did not have disease in their back causing the pain. That's a huge majority. If you take the number of people with chronic headaches, over 90%, 95% at least, are non-structural. If you take people with chronic abdominal pain, chronic pelvic pain, roughly 90% are non-structural. If you take people with um, dizziness and tinnitus, same thing, 90% are non-structural. Chronic nausea, same thing. So there's so many symptoms that the brain can cause.
Yeah, and often actually there is a term that is called symptom imperative, or like symptoms rotation. And once you dealt with some triggers, some sensations, some symptoms, then another one comes, but it's actually the same, right?
Right. Well, it's coming from the danger signal in the brain in that
Yeah.
sense, but it's a different neural circuit. And that's how, and like, as you point out, that's how we diagnose them, by seeing this one will turn on and one will turn off. I saw a lady who had on Monday she'd have pain on the right side of her abdomen, and on Tuesday it'd be on the left side of the abdomen. And then Wednesday it would shift back to the right. It was shifting every day of the week. I saw a woman who had a lot of pelvic pain, and at one moment the pain turned off, and all of a sudden she got severe anxiety, just
Yeah.
like that, like a switch. And that's how we know neural circuits can turn on and off. And that's how we know that these syndromes are not caused by inflammation in the body, because inflammation in the body can't turn on and off that fast.
And when there is a shift in symptoms, do you think it's the brain wanting to protect us and make sure we deal with the symptoms, with the danger?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating thing to think about. Why is the brain doing this? Well, in general, we know the brain is doing it because of this danger factor and protection. Either danger it perceives in the body, though there's something must be wrong because you're telling me you have pain, or danger in people's life because of their what's happening with their children or their spouse or their job, or what's happening in the world. Um, but why the brain will do one thing at one moment and then turn it on and off? Why would the brain do that? We don't really know. The brain is a subconscious structure. It's responding to all sorts of things going on in our lives. Sometimes the clue is in the past. Sometimes people will have pain on the anniversary of someone's death,
Yeah.
and they may not
Know
be
that.
aware. They may not be aware that that's happening every year on the anniversary, or it's happening at certain holidays where there's a certain amount of guilt or regret or emotions that are happening in their life or happened around the certain holidays. Um, Sometimes it's what you're just thinking about. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and she was saying she was walking and she was feeling pretty good. And then she thought, gee, when I walk, I usually get this kind of this kind of abdominal pain. It's not there. There it was. It came up
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
second. As soon as she thought about it, her brain turned it on.
Oh, yeah. I do remember for myself because I did have a lot of pain. And when I was just thinking about walking, because it was related to walking,
Yeah.
like immediately, like I felt my legs with the symptom that was coming back, and it was impressive. I was like, whoa, I'm a superhero. I'm very powerful, but not in a good way. It's a bit like that, right?
It's very much like that, and we use that as part of our diagnostic testing. We ask people to imagine walking, or imagine bending over, imagine driving, imagine going to a relative's house, and oftentimes they'll get tense and anxiety, or they'll get actual pain or other symptoms. Um, and that can, so I saw a lady, one of the stories in my new book that I talk about, there's a woman who had nausea for 4 years. It was very, very severe, and you should have these attacks of abdominal pain that would
Mm.
keep her, it would keep her in bed for days on end. And this nausea was there all the time, but it got worse when someone touched her stomach, or even if she touched her own stomach, it would get worse. So when you touch your stomach and getting the nausea worse, that's because of the brain. Touching doesn't cause nausea.
Yeah.
So what I had her do was have her take her hand and move it gradually closer and closer to her stomach. And as soon as she got to be 6 inches in front, the nausea went up. And I was like, see? And then so I had her imagine, even just imagine moving her hand to touch her. And that also made the nausea go up. And so I started just, so we laughed. We could laugh. Oh, that's the brain. All of her testing didn't show anything wrong with her. She'd been to the top medical centers. And so we started telling herself to smile and imagine touching yourself with joy. Imagine touching yourself with kindness. Imagine touching yourself and you're telling yourself, you're fine, you're safe. You're giving the brain clear messages to counteract the danger signal that it had learned. And the next, she started practicing that, and then she could touch her belly.
Mm.
Within 5 minutes, she could touch her belly. The next morning, she was like touching her belly. Her nausea had gone in one day because she had turned off that neural circuit. It was amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah, completely. That was one of my questions, a big case like this. So thank you for they will love example, especially when we are scared. I think it's really
Yeah,
reassuring for people.
there's so much fear.
So much fear. Yeah. And
So scared. And who wouldn't be? I mean, of course, you're going to be scared, especially when the doctors tell you you've got a diagnosis that they can't fix, or they try medication, or even try injections, even try surgery. It doesn't get better. You think you're hopeless and it can never get better because doctors told you you can't get better. You go to alternative medicine and they try different supplements and diets, and they may tell you of these other diseases
yeah.
like chronic Lyme or chronic Epstein-Barr virus or mold. And all of a sudden you're feeling like you can't do anything and your life is shrinking in. It's so scary and so sad.
And I remember in one of your interview, you were speaking about Lyme disease, and
Yeah.
that like you just in some way have to take some antibiotics for a few weeks, and then it was gone. But because of the neurons that learned, like it can go
Yeah.
for years, but it's actually like really kind of in a way like it's pretty easy to heal from that, from what I heard.
Yeah, Lyme disease is an infection. It's a bacterial infection that's treatable with a couple of weeks of antibiotics, even less than that. And so, but the chronic Lyme disease that people are diagnosing, causing these wide range of symptoms, is not due to Lyme disease. and the testing that they're using is um, interpreted in an inaccurate way oftentimes. I mean, every case needs to be looked at very, very carefully. Uh, but whenever I've seen people who are diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease and I looked at their testing very carefully, it was being interpreted inaccurately and they can recover.
Mm. It reminds me of the mold, and so many people are scared of that, and I understand why. Of course, we don't want to have mold in our house, but often there is one person who lives in a house and is really, really sick, to the point that they can go out or whatever. And there are
Right.
the siblings that are going fine. So, that means that there is something to work on that is not maybe
Everyone,
different.
every house has mold in it.
Mm,
How do you make sourdough bread? You
yeah,
take a bowl and you put flour and water and a little sugar maybe in the bowl, and sourdough happens. Well, where does sourdough is yeast?
mm,
It's a fungus, same thing. It comes from the air. It's everywhere. You know,
yeah,
people in many countries in the tropics have tons of mold in their house because it's damp. It's raining,
yeah, yeah.
and they're not sick. And so this idea of that mold is, again, the idea that mold is causing these chronic symptoms. Mold can cause a certain type of pneumonia called hypersensitivity pneumonitis that's treated with steroids. But the vast majority of people diagnosed with mold toxicity are being told they have mold because of brain fog or anxiety or headache or stomach pain. And it's not accurate. And they're being given this diagnosis that is can be very crippling to them,
Hmm.
scary.
Yeah, of course
I
it
mean,
is.
we've seen people who've left their houses, who've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars tearing up all their house to supposedly get rid of mold. You can't get rid of all the mold. If there's like tons of black mold on the wall, yeah, you have to fix it. But once you fix that, and then people are saying, "Well, I'm still sick. I have to,
Yeah.
or I can't go to certain buildings." Or there was a woman who left her house, left three houses because she kept having symptoms in the house, but it wasn't due to the house, it was due to her brain. She ended up living on a mountaintop in the desert. I mean, it's
Sorry.
horrible,
Yeah.
but she still had symptoms because she wasn't addressing the actual problem. It's really sad.
Yeah, that's what yeah, it's really sad, but that's what I like about when you're trying to heal and you're trying to change all the internal dialogue you have concerning the symptoms, with the messages of safety. And I think it's really, really important. And for me, that changed my life actually. Uh, in the beginning, I was like, yeah, I just message of safety. Maybe it's not that great, but actually it works with the repetition, of course. But like, it's okay, just my brain. I be fine. It's just temporary, or like there is a glitch in my system, but I know I'm safe, that kind of stuff. I think it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, right. If you first make sure that the diagnosis, the assessment is accurate, and you've ruled out a structural problem. This is neuroplastic. That can be relieving in and of itself. When you know it's
Hmm.
neuroplastic, say, "Oh, I don't have this other diseases. I'm not going to die. I'm not damaged. I'm not incurable. There's hope." And you explain how the brain works so you understand that this is real. These are real symptoms, but they're not due to structural problem and they are reversible. And then you do the pain reprocessing therapy, which is giving messages of safety and moving and expanding your life. Uh, and so that you're not in danger. And then you deal on the emotional level. Like, not everyone needs to do this, but a lot of people do need to deal with the emotions of what's happened in their life, the traumatic situations from childhood, or the situations that are occurring in life now that have to do with the spouse or child or a job situation
Hmm.
or political situation that's so makes people so angry or so sad or feeling so guilty or whatever, dealing with that. And then it's also on the last level dealing with who you are and how you relate to yourself. So a lot of people can't be kind to themselves. They can't be compassionate to themselves. They can't give themselves a break. They are so perfectionistic that they're putting pressure on themselves all the time. They're overworking. They're blaming themselves. They're never speaking out for their needs. They're never asserting themselves. All those things can be super, super important and necessary in terms of reversing this. One of the stories in my book is talking about a woman, a new book, who um, she had to leave her marriage. It was an abusive marriage. She had to leave her home. She had to make a change. She had to leave her family for a while, even because of how they treated her. And that's, we don't usually recommend that, but in her case, it was necessary. And that was the most important thing she did to assert herself in her reversal of her symptoms.
Yeah, it's so true because it's so difficult to live with all the symptoms. It's so debilitating, but at the same time, yeah, you got to work on the internal and external and take aligned actions with the stressors. Because, for example, for me, so I'm a new mom, and so I was working so much training, having my podcast and blah blah blah, and so. I love everything, but it was too much on my system, and so the symptoms they became to become bigger and bigger and bigger. But at some point, it was too much, and so right now, like I took aligned action and reduced a lot of stuff
Yeah,
because, like, okay, my system, I hear you now. I will take aligned action to feel better. It's a bit
yeah,
of a dialogue. Of
yeah, yeah,
compassion, of understanding. It's beautiful. It's not easy because I used to love my previous life as well, but I want to feel better at the end. And so sometimes I can catch myself like the old me who wants to do more. And I'm like, easy peasy. Like, no, no, no. We're going to take the beautiful road that is like being aligned with myself and not being so much productive all day long. It's not, I can just be. And
right.
so, of course, it's different depending on people. But I think a lot of person are really perfectionist or people pleaser, or like, yeah, really maybe impulsive, that kind of extreme behaviors that are really not helpful for the danger alarm mechanism, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it took me a long time to learn not to be a people pleaser all the time.
Mm.
It took me a long time to learn that because I grew up. My friend teases me. He says, "How come you're such a good boy? You're always a good boy, Howard." I said, "That's what I was taught by my mom and my dad. I had to be good all the time,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
I had to achieve, and I had to do everything."
yeah,
And I started getting neck pain when I was in my 30s and 40s. And I thought it was due to arthritis. I thought it was because I was getting old, but it wasn't. It was due to the pressure that I was under and that I was putting, mainly the pressure I was putting on myself.
yeah.
And I started learning to say, there's something. A lot of people may not recognize this, but there's magic in one word. The word is no, N-O. In French, it's no.
No.
No. And it can be a magic word, or sometimes you just have to say, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that extra. I can do the 10th thing, but I can't do the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th.
Yeah, and it's not being selfish. For me, I see that like taking care of my inner child. Why do you need child? Maybe it's easier for some people to imagine that, but I think it
Yeah.
works pretty well.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not especially, but like I'm thinking again because I'm a new mom. But if I think about me and I'm better regulated, my baby will
Yeah.
be as well. So,
Yeah.
it's a virtuous cycle. Virtuous. You say virtuous? Virtueux.
Vicious
No,
cycle.
no, the other one. Vertueux? On c'est vertueux, un cycle vertueux, on dit in French. Like the other one, the opposite, a beautiful cycle.
Oh, a positive spiral, like
Okay, yeah, positive.
something like that. A
I was
positive
looking for
spiral.
a word, but
Yeah, I don't know that there's a word for that.
okay, maybe just in French.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit about fibromyalgia and ME/CFS because so many people deal
Yeah.
with that and it's really, really difficult. What can you
Right.
say about it? Because, yeah, from your perspective, I think I know what you're going to say, but let's
Well, the
hear that.
answer is that everybody needs a good evaluation to make sure there's no disease. But
Of
the
course.
vast, vast majority of people diagnosed with fibromyalgia, it means they don't have an autoimmune disease. They don't have a structural problem. It's because the brain is turning on pain. The pain is real, but it's all over the body. There's tender spots. It's shifting from place to place. This is a neuroplastic condition for the most part, and it's the same with MECFS. And even on the MECFS Association in Britain, their association website, somebody just wrote that said, this is really coming from the brain. They're beginning to realize that because it's true. It's coming from the brain. The symptoms are real. They can be devastating.
Yeah.
but they're not due to the mitochondria being damaged. It's not due to lack of energy. It's due to the neural circuits in the brain. And so, once we can help people understand that it's the truth and that there is hope, they can begin to do more socially and physically, and they can begin to address the stressors in their life. And they begin to give these calming and soothing messages to their brain instead of the scary messages of I'll never be able to walk. And we've seen and we have research showing that post-exertional malaise, which is the main
Yeah.
symptom of MECFS, PEM, post-exertional malaise, is reversible.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. Like, how do you deal with that? What do you tell to you? What do you tell to your clients who suffered from that?
Well, again, it starts with what's the assessment? What's the cause? The cause is neuroplastic. That means the cure is neuroplastic.
Yeah,
If the brain can learn a post-exertional crash, it can unlearn
unlearn.
it.
Yeah.
And so if you're focused on I can't get my heart rate above 90, you're living in fear.
Mm.
And that fear is causing the symptoms. And so once you realize, you say, well, let's walk and let's go to and let's throw away the heart rate monitor, and let's just walk in joy and kindness and love and and happiness. It sounds silly,
No, 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 no,
but
it's
let's
not.
just
Yeah.
walk with that in our mind, and let's give ourselves messages. I'm safe. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me. And you walk for 5 minutes, and you do it again. And you do it, and if you get a crash, you do it again. You're just training your brain that you're okay, and your
Yeah.
brain will learn, and then your brain will stop giving the crashes. So sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't, and then you'll say, "Oh, it's inconsistent. That's more evidence that it's my brain."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you walk 10 minutes, and then you walk 15, and you get better.
That's why it's so important to have like the messages of safety, like I was talking a few
Right.
minutes ago, because that, of course, you live in fear. That's normal because it's really difficult. But it's really about shifting the inner dialogue again and again and again and again, like hundreds of times per day. It's really about that.
Right.
Okay, I'm going on 5 minutes. How my heart is palpitating. Oh my God, like I feel some symptoms. No, it's okay. It's just my nervous system of my brain. It's just my
Right.
brain. I'm safe over and over again. Like for me, that's how it was, and for a lot of people, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to do that because you have to give the accurate and true messages to the brain.
Yeah, yeah. So you, for me, I would say that education, like after the diagnosis, of course, like
Yeah.
education is really, really important to understand that we can actually do something. And then there is the graded exposure, the reprocessing therapy.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. And then, sometimes you need what we call emotional awareness and expression therapy, dealing with the underlying emotions. If people are feeling like they're hanging on to guilt, well, that's not going to be their brain's not going to be happy about that. They're hanging on to anger. Their brain's not going to be happy about that. So we want people to be real and express, for example, anger. We want them to be able to express their anger in a safe and healthy way, not in violence in the real world, but
Yeah.
in their mind, and saying, I'm so angry about this. And I just express that anger, and then you can let it go. And then you can move through the sadness and get to compassion for
Yeah.
yourself. And maybe if you can get to forgiveness, then what you're seeing is an emotional processing that can lead to the danger signal going down.
Yeah. That's so important. And so because I know you for a while now, of course you don't, but you're
Yeah.
like my a bit of my resource of in the world of neuroplastic pain. I like because you're always calm, because you have some humor. So it's always nice to hear from you. And I was kind of the first to talk about neuroplastic pain in France because like there was nothing, really nothing. And I'm wondering, like, what do you wish doctors or therapists understood about this, like even now, because in France it's not so much known. I'm trying to make that
Yeah.
known, but yeah, if you have anything to
Well, you're
say.
not alone. There's other French people I know that are doing
Yeah.
on this. And it's a beautiful place, an important place in the world. I did a bike trip in the Burgundy region of France last year, and so
Nice.
we love that very much. And so I think it's really just understanding that this is how people are. This is how people are made. This is how people are constructed. This is how our brains work. It's not, it's not some woo-woo, strange ideas that we have. They're based on hard neuroscience, the neuroscience of what we call predictive processing that our brain creates, as I said, what we see, what we hear, and what we feel. And when you really understand that and follow that through to doing the assessments and looking closely at people's lives and talking to them and looking for all these clues, all of the evidence is there. I've been doing this for 22 years. All of the evidence is there when you take the time and talk to people about their lives and about their symptoms.
Hmm. Yeah. And I was thinking about the MRI that show, like some bulging disc of degenerative disc. And when the people see something actually structural, a problem, how they can understand that it can also be neuroplastic pain better.
Yeah. Yeah. Just because if you look at the research shows that degenerative disc disease occur with increasing age in everyone. Everyone has it.
Yeah. The
It's like
winkles of the
saying,
body.
yeah, wrinkles. It's
Yeah.
like saying you're getting gray hair and that's why you have head pain. It makes no sense.
Mm. Yeah. It's so important. Last question for someone listening who recognize themselves, what's the very first small exercise or tool they can try tonight?
Well, I think it's educating themselves. I think it's taking stock and listing, like looking at the symptoms, looking at the fit criteria, getting the evidence together, and just really thinking about it in this way. In my books, we've got, ways of gathering the evidence, writing it down, and understanding, does this really apply to me or not? Because if it's not a really good idea to start doing the exercises until you are clear and understanding of the process that the symptoms are actually neuroplastic. Once you do that, that's a huge step. But then once you do that, now the exercises are beginning to move. The simplest way to get better from a neuroplastic condition is to know that you're not damaged or broken and start living your life as fully, as joyfully, as peacefully, as and standing up for yourself in the world. And when you do that, people get better.
Yeah, and it's so true what you say is so important because when you suffer all day long, you don't know how to have joys and a purpose and love and that kind of good feelings. And I think it's
Yeah.
about also trying to have that more during the day.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, and realizing that, like you say, it may sound silly that, but it's very powerful because
yeah.
the brain is very powerful. When you change the brain, you change the symptoms.
Yeah, when you laugh, like the system is like, oh, she's laughing, so we can relax a bit. I would
Yeah, the
say like
brain.
it, yeah.
Yeah, you're giving your brain the message that's okay. It's like
Mm,
a child when you give a child safety, as you were saying, safety and comfort and certainty and rules. They know the rules. They know they're going to be safe. They know they're going to be fed. They know they're going to be okay. They can relax. They can be happy.
yeah. If you can, like just one question, because I just thought about that, but we didn't talk about somatic tracking, which I do love and find really helpful. And was like wondering if you use that a lot. I suppose
I don't
so.
use it a lot. A lot of people do. I don't use it a lot myself, but it's inherent if you the idea of somatic tracking is important. It's to allow yourself to feel if you're feeling this tension in your belly, or you're feeling nausea, or you're feeling dizzy, or you're feeling discomfort, is to be able to be with it without fear, is to be able to just observe it, step back from it, and watch it and know that it's okay, and even smile at, oh, that's my
Mm.
brain. It's okay. I'll be fine. And so it's inherent in the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, for me that was really helpful. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the pain because there was so much coupling dynamic with the fear and the
Yeah. Yeah.
symptoms. So that
Right.
was really effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to try it. It's always like that. We are so unique. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you so much, Howard.
Thank you for having me, Lena. It's really a pleasure. Good luck with your little baby.
Thank you. I will cut the recording now.